And we are back with another episode of the Intelligence Assessment with Kevin Shipp. Kevin, great to be with you.
Jason, good to be with you too.
So, you know, Kevin, I think so many people in our audience are kind of disappointed about Tuesday's election results. I was expecting much more of a red wave. What do you think about what happened?
Well, the main thing is there was no blue wave, and it's important that the GOP retained control of the Senate, because the Senate would be the body they would use to try to impeach the president. So that was a good thing. There were some good elections. Ted Cruz got Texas. Not Nunez. DeSantis was elected governor. Rick Scott, who I'm a big fan of, got the Senate seat. So we lost, I think, 34, and probably I had to get a barf bag. Ryan had to hand the gavel over to Nancy Pelosi as Speaker. That's all not good. So the war continues, but it's not as bad as they said it was going to be, and there are some positives.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I've had my questions about Ted Cruz. Obviously, I didn't want the Democrats to take control of the Senate, but I've got a lot of questions about what went on with his father's employment at Schlumberger and why he left New Orleans in 1967 in such close proximity to Jim Garrison's opening of an investigation into the JFK assassination and handing out subpoenas. Obviously, we've seen Rafael Cruz in photographs at the motorcade in Dealey Plaza on November 22nd. And of course, you and I will be in Dallas for the, is it going to be the 55th anniversary of the JFK assassination? So many questions there.
Yeah, there are, and what you're saying is accurate. You know, and Ted Cruz's wife is an executive on Goldman Sachs, which is a global New World Order corporation. Like, it's like #1. Yeah, so there's some things. And one thing about Cruz is he's always voted constitutionally on every single bill. So that's the good thing about him. And God forbid the Democrat would get in and just make things worse. So, you know, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. But you're right about those pictures. They're puzzling.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, before we get into your PowerPoint for today, because we're going to be talking about the CIA spying on whistleblowers, which is a big deal, I want to thank our generous Patreon sponsors. And as you and I were discussing, Kevin, I spent last weekend in California at PatreCon, which is Patreon's annual confab, and they told me quite a lot of details about the inner workings of their company, and it really gave me a renewed enthusiasm for what we're doing here. Patreon's CEO, Jack Conte, is not your traditional, you know, Silicon Valley seeking $1 billion IPO kind of guy. He was an independent musician who created Patreon so that he could break free of the monetization on YouTube, the same thing that you and I are doing. So I definitely want to remind our viewers who are watching right now on patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth that it's very important for people to also visit patreon.com/Kevin_Shipp and follow Kevin. I could not do this show without Kevin, and he's an incredibly important part of this intelligence assessment, obviously. So please sponsor Kevin on Patreon. And you know, Kevin, the other interesting thing that they told me, I really want to make this micro sponsorship as accessible to everyone as possible. We really have done this to keep the trolls out and to prevent this insidious behavior of, you know, thousands of fake YouTube accounts coming and disrupting the comment section and putting strikes on our videos and things like that. And by having a $1 payment associated with every account, it keeps the cost down for our legitimate viewers while making it substantially more difficult for those that would try to damage the broadcast. But it was interesting to learn that because of the way Patreon's billing works and because of their a small company and the way they deal with credit card processing, it actually turns out that a $2 sponsorship is a way better value in terms of getting the maximum payment to creators that people sponsor. So it's very important, whether it's patreon.com/Kevin_Shipp or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, or any creator, any independent journalist that people choose to support. I like them to know what's happening with their money so they can make the decision that's best for them.
Yeah, absolutely, Jason. And this has become a great platform. We don't get manipulated or messed with as much as we did on YouTube and even Twitter. And it's been very, very refreshing working with Patreon. And of course, we're building a community of people out there on Patreon as sponsors. And the content that you and I are putting out together is not available anywhere else. So they're getting a benefit there, as well as other benefits that are coming up. So I really appreciate this platform, and I think it's great.
Absolutely. Now, Kevin, as usual, you've prepared one of your really exciting PowerPoint presentations for us today. Should we get right into that?
Let's do it, man.
Okay, let me get that started up for us here, and let me make sure you can see it on the screen share there.
Yeah, this has just come out in the news thanks to Cheryl Atkinson, who is, in my view, one of the best investigative journalists out there, one of the ones that actually has courage. So she just broke this story. Now, I've seen this personally because they've done it to me, but it's never come out in the press until now. The CIA has been caught spying on whistleblowers. Well, I know that, but the public doesn't, except for some of the lectures I put out there. So they have been spying specifically and targeting specifically whistleblowers, most notably John Brennan. And if you go to the next slide, we'll talk about exactly what they're doing. These documents were released declassified in 2014, and that's where Cheryl got them from. And what they found is the CIA was intercepting emails of U.S. citizens, which is illegal. That's a felony. The CIA is restricted from spying on U.S. citizens. Well, I've seen them do it to me and my family, but overtly, they're not supposed to be spying on citizens. That is a violation of law. But the CIA specifically, John Brennan, was intercepting the emails of U.S. citizens that are not suspected of terrorism or anything else. Now, these, as you can see from the slide, these are emails of the most sensitive kind. These are emails that were written to Congress, to the intelligence committees from whistleblowers like myself, reporting wrongdoing within the intelligence community. And the CIA was monitoring every single one of those emails from whistleblowers. That is chilling. It is a felony. It is very, very serious. Now, if you look at this slide, Jay, this is a copy of the actual memorandum that I sent to members of the Intelligence Committee documenting the CIA's multiple criminal activities and cover-ups. And you can see that Senator Dianne Feinstein, who's now the chairman, and Congressman Nancy Pelosi both got my report of significant, detailed CIA illegal activity. And this report was squashed, it was concealed, it was hidden, and it was never answered. And not one person on this list that this memorandum was for answered me at all, and I never heard from any of them. And of course, now we're seeing why. I knew why back then. The intelligence committees up until now have been a sham. I remember when I was in the agency, we all thought they were a joke. We'd heard accounts of all of the documents that the intelligence committees were supposed to be reviewing were all just thrown and piled in a closet and not even looked at, and all they cared about was the esteem of their position. And I can tell you, without a doubt, the intelligence committees will never peel back the onions of the CIA. To do so would be the destruction of their career, the loss of their clearance, or worse. So they're just a storefront. But here's the actual memo that I sent to them that was suppressed. Now, I get into, and we're going to do this today. There's no video out there with this kind of detail. This is the first. I want to show people exactly how specifically the CIA silences whistleblowers, because they have a detailed procedure, and there are many cases where whistleblowers have been silenced. The state secrets privilege has been used, and they have been concealed from the public. So we know that George Tenet and John Brennan used the state secrets privilege more than any other CIA director in history, and his chief of staff. We know that, but there are hundreds of cases out there that the CIA has not reported. and has not made public, using the state secrets privilege as their excuse. So it's much, much more than that. It was the case with me, although they invoked the state secrets privilege, and I'll show you the outrage of the abomination of how they did it in detail.
Now, Kevin, when you say the state secrets privilege, you mean they can basically just say that anything is too sensitive to reveal and it'll damage national security, and they shut down any argument, any person, anything?
That is absolutely correct, yes.
Catch-all kind of a phrase.
Catch-all kind of phrase. They shut it down, and they seal any evidence against them and make it illegal for anybody to access or discuss that information, and they block Congress from accessing it. That is how tyrannical the state secrets privilege is. So now the CIA engages in illegal activity, and I'm going to detail the violations of executive orders that the CIA did in my case. And I had so much evidence, they went aside with a judge without my attorneys, had a several-hour meeting, and the CIA coerced the judge. The quote of the judge was, well, I guess Mr. Schiff has the CIA over a barrel, because I had photographs, documents, affidavits from witnesses, environmental test results. I mean, I had the whole shebang. And so I had the CIA. So what the CIA did was convince the federal district judge to issue a gag order, not just on me, but on my wife and kids. You can look here on the screen. That is the gag order. Now, they wouldn't even let us see this. They told my attorney and I, well, Mr. Schiff's gag order is too sensitive, so no one can see it. And we said, well, you know, what the HE double toothpicks are you trying to, you know, we're gagged, but you won't let us see the gag order because it's too sensitive. That went on for 2 years. And I think they started getting afraid. I mean, I know a substantial amount more than, of course, I probably will ever talk about, because I'm a man of honor. But I think they started getting afraid that I was just going to pull the plug and pull a Snowden. So they finally sent the gag order. Okay, here's the gag order. And what you're seeing on the screen is the actual gag order. Now, can you tell what anybody is bound by? But look, they redacted virtually the entire thing. So,
it's absolutely crazy, Kevin. And it's also, I mean, this is clear from what you're saying, but just to underscore it, this is not just some version that they allowed you to release here on our videos. This is what they actually sent you. And the gag order is intended to instruct the defendant, in this case you, as to what they are and are not allowed to do. But how can you possibly know if it's redacted?
Well, once again, even though the CIA will give the impression of compliance and then completely non-comply. Case 9/11, they restricted information from the 9/11 Commission, and then when they do send it, it's all blacked out. There's a case of that. So I still didn't know what I was gagged by, or my wife and children, for that matter, because they were poisoned on this facility. And that was entrapment. That was a setup. They were trying to everything they could do to get me and essentially put me behind bars because I know the family jewels. Anyway, so now I listed exactly the executive orders that they violated, which are felonies. This is Executive Order 12333. And that's the prohibition of CIA surveillance of U.S. citizens. It is illegal. It is a felony. And yet, the CIA, ordered by the chief of base, followed our family on and off the facility after we filed our suit against them. I have affidavits from the security guards where the guards advised me in writing that they had been ordered to surveil our family. That includes a wife and children who were not government employees. The CIA head of the base, and I hope, God willing, someday he's held accountable, because, man, he should be charged. But the head of the base ordered surveillance of us, and we were followed on and off the facility. So if they make the excuse, well, this was a government facility, we can surveil who we want, they surveilled us off the facility, a gross violation of this executive order. They conducted electronic eavesdropping of my office computer, and they were so ignorant, I guess, not knowing what I knew, because I'm trained in technical security countermeasures, that they left all the wire clippings on the floor under my computer when they had wired the computer with surveillance devices. And that's one of the things you always look for, is wire clippings and things. And sure enough, they were all over the floor under my computer.
Wow.
They conducted electronic surveillance on my cell phone, and this is what happened. My son and I were talking about the break into the house, what we were going to do to expose them, and my cell phone, of course, was with us. Later on, I checked my voicemails, and there was a recording of every conversation we had about what the CIA was doing, and they screwed up, and it was saved on my voicemail.
Yeah.
So I knew what they were recording, if you can imagine. I called AT&T, not knowing at the time that they're the surveillance arm of the CIA, and reported it, and never ever heard back from them. So
Wow.
these are felonies, Jason, that we're talking about here.
Do you still have those voicemail recordings, Kevin?
We don't, not on that phone, but I have other tapes of the
Wow.
CIA admitting things, and that was part of my evidence to the judge, which terrified the CIA because I've got them on tape saying some of the things that they did. You know, they're arrogant, but sometimes they're not real smart.
The thing that's so shocking to me, Kevin, is that when they enlist your fellow agents to spy on you and to violate the rights of your family, I would hope that those agents might, for the most part, refuse because they would realize that the same sort of thing would happen to them.
Well, if they refuse, it will happen to them. That's why they don't refuse. They'll destroy them.
Wow.
They'll cite them with their favorite charge. I'm trying to think of what the charge. Insubordination. They'll hit them with insubordination, which is a terminable offense. So if my associates were ordered to spy on me and my family, if they decline to do that, they would be hit with that particular charge, insubordination, and then they lose their jobs, which means they lose their retirement, which means they lose their health insurance, which means they can't provide for their family, which means their career is blackballed. It's complete personal destruction. So they do it.
Well, it's important for people who might be considering working for the CIA to know these things, because everything that you're saying reminds me very much of things I've seen like in The Sopranos and stuff. It's like once you're in, you're not going anywhere.
Well, they violate RICO statutes, which were designed for organized crime routinely.
Wow.
And I'll get into some of that. They are probably the largest and most secretive organized crime organization in the world, and they are no James Bond. They don't go to cocktail parties and recruit spies above board and honestly. They drone wedding parties. They destroy whistleblowers. They assassinate people that they consider a threat to them, to the CIA's existence. They tried to eliminate me twice.
Wow.
So they're no James Bond, and that's the lie the CIA puts out in the sanctioned movies that they put out, that the CIA is this heroic organization like James Bond, and it does all these super secret things that are patriotic. That's a bunch of baloney. They're out doing prostitution every night, many of them on our tax dollars. I've seen it. It's been proposed to me, and I refused because I was a married man. This is no noble organization. So we can do a show on that later, but some of it is pretty disgusting.
You know, we just had a show yesterday with Larry Nichols, and Iran-Contra came up, one of the most famously exposed CIA operations. And something I found very curious is that when you do a Google search for Barry Seal in 2018, you get far more pictures and information about Tom Cruise than you do about the actual Barry Seal. So that's pretty convenient the way that works out.
And we know that Barry Seal was assassinated. And they were just waiting for him. There's a classic example. I was there during Iran-Contra, and I was on the 7th floor. There's a classic example. The CIA is still doing these things. They haven't stopped because it's a newer and kinder CIA. They're still doing them. They did this to me from 2001 to 2004, and then threatened me with prison with the state secrets privilege in 2012 when I finally went public. So they've not changed. They've still got blood on their roots, and that blood is seeping out through their fruit. We'll do another show on exactly how and what they're doing, but it's disgusting. Going back to the slide, the CIA sealed. I conducted a secret private environmental test. The CIA refused to test the house. My wife was bleeding from her gums and her nose, bruising all over her body, lost her short-term memory, was on morphine. These are all the symptoms of mustard gas poisoning, by the way. And we found a mustard gas shell in our yard. The house was infested with black mold to the point where you could breathe it and smell it, and which will make you sick also. They never gave us the opportunity to test the house, obviously. They refused 5 times. They finally gave me the permission, the chief of base, who one day is going to reap what he sowed, approved me hiring an outside environmental company, which we thought, oh, we're finally there. The night before the test, he called me and said, we canceled your company. The CIA is going to do their own test. So they did the test the following day. Black cars pulled up. These CIA guys got out. And I have a degree in biology. So they proceeded to test the air in the house. They opened all the doors and the windows in the house when they tested the internal air. And I said, you can't do this. This is ridiculous. I mean, I'm a former biologist. If you're going to test indoor air, you seal everything in there so you can see what's coming up from below the house. They said, no, we test it this way. I said, no, you don't. And I shut them. Then they opened them and told me basically to get out. So their test was a fake. So I conducted my own test, secret test, and it came back. The guy had a courage. He was later shot in the head. Whether that was a coincidence or not, I don't think so. But anyway, in a courageous report, he stated that the CIA's report was erroneous. There were toxins in the house and the family should be evacuated. The CIA took possession of his report, and that's one of the things they sealed in the case when they invoked the state secret privilege, so no one could see it. Okay, so and I have affidavits for this. The CIA destroyed the official reports when they broke into our house and painted a chemical on the ceiling. The head of the base removed all the records of all the toxic things within that particular residence. He removed them all so no one could see them. That was sealed by the CIA. I have an affidavit from one of the senior officials on the base who was there when the chief of the base removed those documents so no one could see them. These are all felonies. These are all gross violations of Executive Order 12333, the CIA surveilling U.S. citizens within the United States, and they need to be held accountable, and these people need to be charged.
Now, Kevin, while you're in the CIA, are you considered an executive civilian or are you military personnel?
While you're in the CIA, they own you. And most employees, including myself, don't know this. But when you sign your secrecy agreement and your personnel papers, buried deep in there is that you give up your right to a trial, to a jury trial, to a personal injury trial. And in this case, that as a CIA employee, you no longer have those rights.
Wow.
And no CIA employees know that. They also don't know that the CIA will invoke the state secret privilege and seal all the evidence that you have. And I didn't know that, and most employees, maybe until now, don't know that. And let me also state, and I just put this out on a tweet, there's a lot of CIA people that are afraid to speak out or say anything that are retired because they think the CIA is going to yank their retirement. That is a felony. CIA officers and employees' retirement comes from the Office of Personnel Management, not the CIA. For the CIA to try to control their retirement is a felony. They tried that on me. They tried to withhold my retirement. I caught them on it. I called the OPM, told them they were committing a felony, and I had the cash value of my retirement within a week. But that's what they try to do. These are gross felonies, and of course, the CIA has been doing that sort of thing with impunity. Now, the last one is most saddening, I guess. I went to the CIA Office of Inspector General with all this evidence and all the things that had gone on. Now, the Inspector General, we now know that they're kind of a sham because they're inspecting the organization they work for. The Office of Inspector General, and I had a senior officer that came out and told me this personally. I have the names of all these people, that the Office of CIA Inspector General was complicit in the cover-up of my case and the targeting of me personally. They were assisting me. They were part of a RICO-like operation to try to destroy me because I was coming out.
Wow. So these Inspector General offices are not too effective, whether it's the intelligence community, the DOJ, or whatever. And of course, that OPM office was famously hacked in 2016, 2015.
Yeah. 4.2 million SF-171 forms, which would probably include mine. Any person that had applied for a government position, including in the intelligence agencies, was captured by China. I think it was 3.4 million records, and that is the most personal data. When you fill that form out for a clearance, you're listing everything in your life for them, your background, what you've done, what you haven't done, your family members. Everything is in that form, and China has it all.
Wow.
So now there's another order they violated. And what I'm doing, Jason, is I'm working through for people how they do it. I want people to understand how the CIA does this. No one's ever brought this out before because they're afraid of getting what they tried to do to me, and they've got families. And so this is the first time, humbly, that I'm going to lay out how the CIA silences whistleblowers. We know now that they're monitoring all their communication with reports to the intelligence community. So Executive Order 12356, subsection 1.7, Bill Binney alluded to that in our DC roundtable. What the CIA violated, what that is the illegal classification of documents. The CIA is prevented through Executive Order 12356, 1.7, A, B, and C from classifying things just to cover up illegal activity. That's against the law. It's a felony. They do that, Jason, routinely, because they do it in secret and Congress never sees it. It is the power of secrecy that allows the CIA to get away with what it's doing. Secrecy is good if it's used constitutionally. It protected me and my associates when we were out in the field doing operations. It protects our troops out in when they're doing fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan, so the enemy doesn't know their troop movements. Those are the good reasons, but the CIA has weaponized that, as we see now with the soft coup against Trump, as we see in my case. The CIA has weaponized secrecy outside the Constitution illegally to conceal their illegal activities. This is Executive Order 12356, which forbids the CIA from illegally classifying documents. In my case, the CIA classified all of the unclassified memos between me and my attorneys, and between my attorneys and them. They were classified, and then they were sealed. They classified all the doctor's diagnoses of my family's toxic exposure. Excuse me, those are open source medical documents. They classified them and they put them under seal so no one could see them, including Congress. The environmental test results of the secret test I had done, and it was kind of funny. When all this was going on, they brought me in. You come into a big meeting. I went into the conference room, and there's several CIA officers, senior ones, sitting around the table. And they said, Mr. Shipp, here's the result of our environmental study, the one that was done with the doors and windows open. Here, we want you to read it. I read it, and then I had with me under the table my environmental results from the private environment, well-known guy, by the way. And so I said, well, that's interesting. And then I took my report and I slid it across the table and I said, read this, because he proved that their test was poorly done and was erroneous. And I remember, their jaws dropped. They were like, he didn't know what to say. And I said, thank you very much, gentlemen. There you have it. Well, see, I took a hold of that report, blacked out parts of it, and then sealed it using the state secret privilege. The fellow that conducted, who was an awesome guy, testified against a lot of corporations in residence contamination. He was known as a hero. He was later shot in the head. He lived, and now he's blind. He was I don't want to use his name because I'm still kind of, it's out there. I've got the news reports on my website. I blacked out his last name because I'm still protecting him, but he was shot in the head, execution style. He was a well-known martial arts instructor, and now he's blind, and he's still doing it with teaching martial arts without sight. So man's a hero. Anyway. Wow. So in From the Company of Shadows. So I wrote From the Company of Shadows, and I put this cover up, the doctor's diagnosis, the break-ins, and all the affidavits in the manuscript. And the CIA blacked it all out. It was not classified. It's the things I just talked about. There was no source, no method, no identities of CIA employees anywhere in that book. And if you have the book, you can go, I think it's chapter 26. You can see that they blacked out huge swaths of that illegally in violation of Executive Order 12356 without question. And I'll show you one excerpt of that in a second. And of course, the CIA Office of Inspector General was complicit in this. And I have statements from one of their senior officers after he retired. All right, so let's go to the next one, Jason, if you would, please. This is a copy, chapter 26 from the Company of Shadows, my book. This is the doctor's diagnosis, my family's illnesses, the break into the house, and look what they did to it. They blacked it all out in violation of that executive order. Go to the next slide. They've weaponized secrecy, obviously. This is the only picture of my family, all of whom were exposed to this toxin, whether it was mustard gas or black mold. They never gave us the opportunity, or they never tested the house. They blocked that. But this is the only picture of my family's identity that they would allow me to place in the book. Now, is this ridiculous or what? They got the eyes blacked out of all the members of my family that were exposed to the toxin. I fought them to get my cover rolled back so that I could reveal my own identity. So you can see me, and then you can see my family with their eyes blacked out, and that's all they allowed to go in the book, which is not, is it just ridiculous? It's tyrannical.
Ridiculous is the word that came to mind.
Yeah. Stupid may be another one, but see, this is the arrogance of narcissism, and most of my bosses, with a couple of exceptions, were narcissists. They would do anything. Many of them wanted to be the director someday. They would do anything to further their career. They were narcissistic. One probably should have been in a hospital somewhere, but these were sick people.
Wow.
So this was what they did to my family, who are still suffering, by the way, with immune system problems. So I put in the book, my oldest son is still, his immune system is still badly compromised. They blacked out his name. They called us all Does. I was John Doe. I think my oldest son was Johnny Doe, and they gave us all fake names because they didn't want our identities to come out, because it would mean what that base was doing, much of which would horrify most Americans. What that base was doing was pretty bad. And that's why they went after us. They were
When did
afraid.
that toxic contamination occur, Kevin? How many years ago?
We started getting 6 months after we moved in. That would have been 1999.
Wow.
When I began to request environmental studies, and they refused 4 times. And it went all the way up to 2004 when they invoked the state secrets privilege. And this is the worst part. And later I talk about how the CIA manipulates all 3 branches of government. But when a case like mine goes before the federal court, and the judges have said this themselves, we're not experts on national security or intelligence, so we'll agree with whatever the CIA says. And so they rubber stamp the state secrets privilege and examine none of the evidence. And that's what happened.
Your family's been struggling with these health problems for more than a decade, almost 20 years.
That's correct. And my son is still very ill, and they're still trying to figure out what to do about his immune system. My
goodness.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, he just went to the doctor. He's got severe pains in his feet, and the doc examined him, and he said, I don't know what it is. I haven't seen anything like this other than exposure to chemical weapons. That was a doctor's statement. So, there's all kinds of evidence out there, but he's still, he's afraid he's going to die because of this. Could you imagine living with that for that long? That's why I get so outraged, and I don't care what they do to me. I could care less what they did to my family, every single one of them. Most especially my eldest son, who was with me exposing their cover-up and did some pretty innovative things. He's still very sick, and I'm not going to let them get away with it. So this is in my book. I got it in there. They had no idea whose shadow this was. This is his shadow and his little daughter, my granddaughter, and his wife that I put in the book. And underneath it is basically explaining that families' identities are covered up using the state secrets privilege. That was all that was said there, and if you look in the book, that subtitle was blacked out. So now, this is how they did it. And people that are experts, I'm in contact with some of them on the tyrannical use of the state secrets privilege. This is how the CIA does it, and I want people to know that. Now, I just proved that they violated 2 major executive orders and committed multiple felonies, which they knew, and I had the evidence. And the judge forced them to a mediated settlement. As a matter of fact, as I mentioned, the judge says, well, I guess Mr. Schiff has you over a barrel. The evidence was so strong that the judge ordered the CIA to a mediated settlement with our family in Washington, D.C., ordered him to do it. The CIA, after 4 hours of deliberation, the CIA attorney signed the mediated settlement agreement. I just put that out on my website because I don't care. People need to see what they did, and they need to hold these people accountable. So they signed the legal settlement agreement, and we thought, finally, we brought this thing to a close. The CIA, I think it was 3 days later, contacted my attorney, and threatened. They said, "You tell Mr. Shipp that if he doesn't accept a fraction of the signed settlement agreement, we're going to invoke the state secrets privilege and seal the case." Now think about that. Not national security, not sources and methods, because they did not want to abide by the settlement agreement, which really was not that much. It should have been in the millions, but it wasn't. So to keep from having to abide, it was arrogance. They knew they had the power of secrecy. So to prevent them having to abide by us, and I have their signatures on fortheloveoffreedom.net, prevent them having to abide by that settlement agreement, they invoked the state secrets privilege to seal the case, because I said, no, I demand that you abide by the agreement. You signed it. So they invoked the state secrets privilege and sealed all my evidence that forced them to legal mediation. And then they threatened not just me, but my wife and kids with prison, criminal violations if we talk to anybody about the evidence in our case, because it would be a violation of the state secrets privilege. See how they do it?
Yeah.
Most people, they tried to drain us, of course, and this is one of their main tactics. They tried to drain us with legal expenses. Sadly for them, I had a courageous Texas attorney. They beat the daylights out of him, and now he's. You'll see on my on fortheloveoffreedom.net a tremendous document that he wrote to them about this outrageous practice. But he is so beat up now. I just met with him. He's a wonderful man, heroic. No one's ever done what he did and stand up against the agencies, including to some confrontations we had in the headquarters building. Just a man of courage. Maybe someday he'll be recognized. So he was also threatened with criminal penalties. If he talked to anyone about the evidence he had collected or his memorandums, he would face criminal penalties under the state secrets privilege. So they silenced him also.
Wow.
Then they did this. If you go out and on the website and you Google the state secrets privilege, you'll see some. I think there's 5 major cases. There's 47 others, or 47 total cases that publicly they know the CIA invoked. But there are hundreds that the CIA, which they did in my case, have used the state secrets privilege to keep their use of that from being reported to anyone, to Congress, the judiciary, or anyone else. And so those cases, and there are hundreds of them, there may be thousands, because they're all hidden under the state secrets privilege and they're not reported as having been used by the CIA.
That's crazy.
That's insane. It's tyrannical. They're no longer, well, they never have been a constitutional organization, but
right.
And this is what. So I pressed on, as did my attorney. They did this, as the saying goes, you can mess with the man, but you don't mess with his family. They injured my wife and my children. They ruined any chance they had for an education when they went after me. Some of them are still sick to this day. And that's what I do. Why I do what I do it for them. But this is what they did to me. This is their system of personal destruction. And this is why no one in the CIA comes out to blow the whistle, although they've tried to report to the intelligence communities, and we see what the CIA does to them with that. But I totally lost my retirement completely. They ordered the OPM not to give me the cash value that I had in my thrift plan. And the CIA ordered the OPM not to do that, which is a felony. And I mentioned earlier that I called the OPM, reminded them of that, and I had that. Our family needed that to survive because we lost everything. We were forced to go into COBRA health insurance, which is unaffordable, especially to a family that's lost their income.
Yeah.
I had applied for, a hardship loan with CI Northwest Federal Credit Union. I was approved for that loan to help our families survive and lower the interest rates on our credit cards as I fought this battle. What the CIA did was destroy the approval for that hardship loan. The person who approved the loan and we signed it, quote unquote, no longer worked there. Huh. And when I called the head of the credit union, who did not know what they were doing yet, he looked at this and said, "Man, this looks like some kind of retribution." Well, apparently he got a phone call, never heard from him again. I have him on tape saying,
wow.
So this is what they did. They blocked my employment. I got 2 bosses, both of which supervised me into very sensitive intelligence operations that became very successful. And both of them wanted to hire me. They were now working for a private company. They wanted to hire me to do some of the classified work they were doing. They called the CIA, and the CIA said, no, do not hire him. Do not hire Kevin Schiff. So they blocked me from retirement and getting income for my family. By the grace of God, I went out beyond them, and I was able to get a program manager job for the Department of State, managing a $45 million contract, and I was awarded a $10,000 bonus for winning the contract. So by the grace of God, I landed on my feet despite what they were trying to do. So I finally said, after a good bit of thought, I decided they're not going to get away with this. This is a violation of several federal laws. This is a violation, obviously, of the Constitution. They're using secrecy to cover up illegal activity. They did this to my family. I just can't let this go. So I went public with their use of the state secrets privilege, facing prison. It meant 10, 15 years in prison, and I knew it. And my wife now will tell you, we waited every day for the black Suburbans to pull up. Yeah. And I would walk out and just present on my wrists. And anyway, the first paper I went to was the Washington Post. Boy, did I learn a lesson there. The Washington Post went directly to the CIA and reported that I had contacted them. And they sat on the case for 30 days, called me almost daily, and tried to get me to reveal classified information, working directly with the CIA. We all know now they're a part of Operation Mockingbird 2.0, which you and I have done a show on.
Yeah.
I contacted the New York Times, who was waiting to air the story, and I called them and said the Post refuses to report on this. So Charlie Savage, to his credit, went out and just pounded it. I think it was a front page story in both papers, and Charlie got into some detail on what was going on that base. I don't know how he found it out, but if you go to Charlie Savage's New York Times report on my case, you'll see that he developed some things. Charlie's a good journalist. I've done multiple TV and radio interviews, as you know. I've reported this on social media, and I put all these documents out on my website, fortheloveoffreedom.net. Not to be a hero, but so that people can see what the CIA suppressed and the evidence that they hid by this gross abuse of the state's secrets privilege. This is humbly a historic case. No CIA officer has ever done this, and I did it because they did this to my family. They violated the Constitution that I hold dear, and I'm willing to pay whatever price I have to. I made that decision several years ago. So you can go to For the Love of Freedom and see those documents.
Absolutely.
Okay, go ahead and click it again, Jason. I think it's probably up. There we go. This is what I want to leave people with, because people are not reporting these things, especially employees, because they're terrified. And you can see why, of what the CIA will do to them if they do come out and blow the whistle. They will literally destroy them and their family. And for most of us, it's our family that is the most important. No CIA employee wants the CIA to destroy his or her retirement, because then that destroys the financial future and present and future of their family, their wife and kids. Who's going to do that? So like the mafia, they go after your wife and children, and that's why most people will not take any action, because they know they'll go after their family. I just showed you how they went after mine. If you'll hit the button, I want the next one to come up, and I want people to remember this. Thomas Jefferson, when people fear their government, there is tyranny. I just showed you evidence of this tyranny. But we all have to listen and remember and never forget the last part of this quote, because it's the only way that we're going to retain our Constitution. We're in a post-constitutional government now. But it's the only way, is the American people having the courage to stand up, even pressuring Congress, who have lost their spine and are paid off. But I want to close reading the last one. When the government fears the people, there is liberty. They need to fear us, and they need to fear me. And from what I understand, they do. And that's the only way we can do it. We have to be willing to make the personal sacrifice, come out with everything we've got, so the government fears us, and only then will we get back to a constitutional government. Only then.
Wow. It's never been more clear that we're in a post-constitutional America right now, and this was a really powerful presentation, Kevin. It's it's got to be repeated how the CIA exerts this control. There are no regulations whatsoever, no oversight. They've got numerous redundant capabilities to shut down any legal action that you might take against them. Even when you were victorious in a settlement, they just disregard that, overturn it. What's the point of even going to court with them?
There is no point. As a matter of fact, what they tried to do with us, and that's another funny story, is what the CIA will do is demand that you use one of their attorneys. Yeah, that's what they do. Well, what I did, knowing that, because I was a senior officer, is we filed a mold case against we had renter's insurance against the company responsible for our renter's insurance. And so I submitted a request to the CIA to clear my attorney for this mold case against the insurer. Well, they granted my attorney a CIA clearance, and then we turned around and sued them. They told me I couldn't use my own attorney, and then I said, no, here's the documentation that you've already given them a clearance. And of course, you know that pissed them off. I already had a cleared attorney, and there was nothing they could do about it. And it was he and I that fought them for the next 4 years. So we pulled a fast one on them. There wasn't a thing they could do about it.
Very clever. Really excellent, Kevin. And of course, I definitely want people to go and visit fortheloveoffreedom.net. This is Kevin's website, and many of the documents that he was referring to in that presentation are here. Kevin, where can people see the letter from your lawyer?
They can see the letter on fortheloveoffreedom.net. If they go to the Cover Up tab, they'll see a letter from my attorney and all the other documents. If they go to For the Love of Freedom and they click on the Cover Up tab, it's all there.
I wonder if we could actually get your attorney on as a guest for a future show, or perhaps he's trying to keep out of this stuff now.
Well, he has some health problems as a result of this.
Wow.
You imagine going against the CIA and them doing all these things. He was there. He and I saw the chemical that they painted on the ceiling, and they beat him up badly. He is the reason we got them to a mediated settlement. Now he's got health problems, and he wants to hide the rest of his life, and he's got to kind of take care of his health. And just basically that's what they do. They wore him out. Again, he was a hero. He did not charge us the tens of thousands of dollars of legal fees that he should have. He did it in the end pro bono, and we got I think we had $10,000 that he and we had another attorney. That's another story. They blocked his clearance. Jonathan Turley, the Georgetown law professor you see on Fox News, you'll see this on the Cover Up tab. We brought him in as our attorney because he's an expert on Constitution, and they blocked Jonathan Turley, who had a clearance for access to any of my evidence. That shows you the unbridled power they're using. Yeah, if you scroll down, that's what you and I just talked about, the violations, direct violations of the executive order. There it is. The attorney letter exposing the cover-up. My attorney wrote that. It is beautiful. There's obviously more to that document. That is his response to them trying to using the state secrets privilege. A beautiful job, and I put that up there with, of course, not mentioning who he is. There's the memo about Jonathan Turley, who my attorney brought onto our case. Turley was willing to get on because he saw what the agency was doing. And you can read how the CIA blocked constitutional expert, Georgetown professor Jonathan Turley, with the government clearance from any access to my evidence.
Wow. Now, Kevin, you and I have spoken about the fact that there are lawsuits being brought against me, including by individuals who claim to be former CIA agents. And there's just been a motion submitted to actually move the court to issue a gag order against me. So I've been doing some research into these gag orders, and I found some legal documents that say that gag orders are almost always unconstitutional.
Yes. You can go to Alan Dershowitz, well-known attorney, and he considers gag orders unconstitutional, which they are.
Yeah, so that's interesting that they're able to achieve that. And it's very important that people visit fortheloveoffreedom.net, because that's Kevin's website where you can get the shadow code that's going to unlock all of these redacted elements in the book. The book, of course, is From the Company of Shadows, and it's a harrowing story that Kevin tells. This is a really important book for everyone in the United States to read. Kevin, do you know if President Trump is aware of your story? Has he read From the Company of Shadows?
Well, I've been told by one of his senior advisors that she took my speech in Texas about the shadow government, which would include this, that she took it to President Trump. Whether he's seen it or not, he's got his hands are pretty full, but I know that it was given to him.
Wow. I mean, this is important. We've got basically a criminal organization of unlimited power that has its tentacles in every single aspect, you know, the justice system, and they can control lawyers and judges and courts, and that's really quite difficult to imagine. So that's got to thank you again, Kevin, for coming forward with this information. I think it's I'm glad that we're doing this show, because it's, you know, people should read the book, of course, but the more we talk about it and the more detail you go into it and the more times we go over it, it just sinks in a little bit more each time. It's so devastating what they've done to your family, and it almost feels as if they've, to some extent, spared you to make you feel even worse about it. Your son having these health problems throughout his life. It's just, I'm really sorry, Kevin.
Well, thank you, Jason. And they haven't really spared me. They're afraid of, I know as much as Snowden did. Now, I'm a man of honor. I don't have any intention of exposing that, but they know what I know. And we've got kind of an unspoken agreement where they're leaving me alone, plus the statute of limitations has run out, but they're leaving me alone because they know what I know, and I know quite a bit. There has been 2 near-death experiences that I have had because of this. I've had 2 heart attacks.
Wow.
And thank God my heart is normal and healthy, and I'm back at the gym working out because we caught them early. I lost my retirement, lost my house, lost my car. It severely affected my family. My wife and oldest son still have not gotten over it. They try to destroy me. That's what they do. They try to destroy you to such an extent, as John Kirikow mentioned, you want to jump in front of a freight train. You know,
right.
What they didn't plan on with me is I'm a person of faith, and I believe I answer to a higher authority, and I'm not afraid of them. I don't fear them at all. Really, I think I've been told they fear me, and they should fear me because I'm exposing what they're doing.
I think they fear honesty because it would be unkind to them given everything that they've done. Everything that Kevin is saying really just reiterates in my mind the need for our viewers who might be watching on patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth to also please visit patreon.com/Kevin_ship with 2 P's and become a patron. Kevin really needs our support, and there's literally no one else in the country coming forward to do this. So this is not an appeal to plead for money. This is an alert that we need to support whistleblowers like Kevin, not only financially, but to let people know that if you're involved in an agency like this that has no regard for the Constitution, no regard for the personal welfare of Americans, innocent people like Kevin's family, we're on a road to a really dark place. So it's important that people support Kevin in any way that they can. And Kevin, I really think we should think about a way that we can create some kind of campaign that might present an opportunity for you to have an audience with President Trump. Obviously, we're a little bit disappointed by the results of the election on Tuesday, but the Republicans have retained control in the Senate, and so President Trump hopefully can be effective through the second half of his presidency here. I look forward to another term for President Trump. And this type of thing that you're bringing up, really, it transcends politics, it transcends partisanship, and it's something that we really need to get a grip on because it's going to take over our country. It has taken over our country.
Yes.
This is evil among us. Well, Kevin, we're close to the end of our hour here for tonight. Was there anything else you wanted to leave us with before we wrap it up?
Thank you, Jason, it's great as always to be on with you. As I said earlier to people, don't fear your government. Remember, the only way to a constitutional government is for the government to fear us. And that's beginning to happen. It's beginning to happen under President Trump. So remember, do not fear the government because our constitutional freedoms are at stake.
Absolutely. And the website is fortheloveoffreedom.net. Kevin's book, From the Company of Shadows, contains a detailed account of this incredible story. And of course, you're going to get access to the Shadow Code. So purchase the book from fortheloveoffreedom.net. You'll get a signed copy from Kevin. And of course, the Shadow Code is going to instruct you as to how to unlock the redacted information within the book. You can support Kevin with monthly sponsorship on patreon.com/Kevin_ship with 2 P's. And of course, Crowdsource the Truth is on Patreon at patreon.com/crowdsource the truth. You know, the other thing that I learned, Kevin, is that Crowdsource the Truth is actually in the top 0.4% of all Patreon creators. So we are making an impact on this platform, and I could not do it without you. So thank you so much for creating this program with me, and I'll see you next week in Dallas.
Look forward to it, my friend. Thank you.
Take care. See you soon, and thanks everyone for watching.